It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. You can find out more information about me. Follow me on X, at Dan Mandis Show. I'm on X, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, on all the socials. And I cannot buy a follower on Rumble. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but follow me anywhere and everywhere at Dan Mandis Show. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. A proud Red Eye Radio affiliate, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of news out there, especially coming off of a 3-day weekend, and I wanted to play this piece of audio for you because it shows what I would say is the lack of self-awareness of the Democrats when we start talking about politics. Now, this particular soundbite comes from MSNBC. And they're talking about Donald Trump, who they say Trump is being authoritarian. Listen to this. This, at least in my opinion, is absolutely laughable. And they're talking about Donald Trump and the investigation into the beginnings of Russian collusion and those accusations against Donald Trump.
Begin with President Trump's authoritarian ambitions. In an exclusive new interview with the Daily Caller, Trump was asked whether he'd be comfortable seeing former FBI Director James Comey and former CIA Director John Brennan arrested live on television as part of his administration's new focus on the Russia election interference investigation. His response would not bother me at all. That attitude, punishing perceived enemies while rewarding devotees, is exactly what we're seeing across the federal government.
So what's crazy about that is that you have Donald Trump, who is simply, it seems to me, what the president is trying to do is he's trying to figure out what the heck happened with Russian collusion. And so you have, and there's all these people that are out there saying, oh, he's going after his political enemies, just like we said he would. The reality is that something happened with Russian collusion. And that something was that the people that were working with Barack Obama, you're talking about James Comey, Clapper, John Brennan, and they seemingly colluded, utilizing information that was far from credible to lead the agencies down to where Donald Trump ultimately ended up getting investigated for colluding with the Russians. And it tied him up for 2 years. And then the last 2 years of Trump's administration was taken over by COVID. So let me ask you this question. All these people over there at MSNBC, all of these people in the mainstream media, all of these people at CNN, is Donald Trump going after his political enemies, or is he trying to figure out who did what? Because ultimately, as you know, he was cleared in the Mueller investigation. So why did it begin in the first place? It's because James Clapper, John Brennan, James Comey, Barack Obama, and probably a myriad of others. I think somebody said 34, 35 different people in the various agencies, intelligence agencies, colluded to make it look like Donald Trump colluded with the Russians, which he never did. But they wanted to hamstring Donald Trump. And so this is not Donald Trump going after his political enemies, which is exactly what they would want you to believe. But the reality is that, no, he's not going after his political enemies. He's going after people that may have broken the law. And you got to realize that Donald Trump isn't the only victim here. If you voted for Donald Trump in that first election, you are a victim too. I want you to think about this. The reason they wanted to tie up Donald Trump in all of these investigations is that so that he could not do what he is elected to do, what he was elected to do. It's a great distraction trying to deal with accusations of colluding with the Russians and trying to deal with special counsel investigations. The exact quote from the Daily Caller is, Reagan Reese is from the Daily Caller. She is the reporter. Reese, so James Comey and John Brennan, would you be comfortable seeing them handcuffed and arrested live on TV? And Donald Trump, there's no audio. This is a website interview, Daily Caller. But Trump says, no, would not bother me at all. Now, why would James Comey go to jail? Well, let's think about it. Massive oversight failures while he was leading the FBI, right? Remember that? He leaked that conversation that he had with Donald Trump to the New York Times through a friend. Remember that? Remember the 17 errors in the FISA applications regarding the spying on Carter Page in the Trump campaign. Now, what was that, or were those criminal? Or were they just incompetence and evil? But he did all that. You got your massive oversight failure while he was leading the FBI. Again, he leaked that conversation that he had with Donald Trump to the New York Times through a friend. And all of those errors in the FISA application process. Remember the Inspector General came out and said that James Comey and James Comey's FBI, they made massive, massive mistakes. But were they criminal? And by the way, there's also people that say that James Comey should go to jail because of that 8647 shell formation. Many say that was a threat against the president, issuing a call for the president to be killed. Many people say that was James Comey, a dog whistle trying to instruct someone somewhere to try to take out the president. And James Comey, oh, no, I just happened along this shell formation on the beach. I have no idea where it came from, but I thought, oh, it's so artistic and beautiful, and I'm going to go ahead and post this on the socials. And nobody believed it. I mean, at least I didn't believe it. Most conservatives didn't believe it. A lot of Democrats didn't either. Democrats, though, of course, don't care. Why would John Brennan go to jail? Well, remember, Brennan lied to Congress about the dossier being used as a basis to investigate Donald Trump and ultimately leads to the Mueller investigation. He told Congress, remember this, John Brennan told Congress that dirty dossier, completely discredited dirty dossier, was not used as a basis for the investigation ultimately that followed with the Mueller investigation. They didn't use the dossier, he said, but it turns out that he did. As a matter of fact, just in the last couple of months, as you know, new emails do show that John Brennan did include the dossier and fought for it to be included in that intelligence community assessment over the objections of other people. Because the other people were saying, you're going to really use this dossier in this intelligence community assessment, knowing full well that it would lead to accusations of Russian collusion when there really was no proof of any Russian collusion, and that led to the Mueller investigation? So they purposely, John Brennan and James Comey and others, James Clapper maybe, they actually used discredited information in the hopes, in my opinion, that it would lead to that Mueller investigation and that would tie up Donald Trump so that he couldn't do what he was voted in office to do. That's what they did. Now, if that is somehow a crime, which it seems like it should be, then they ought to be charged. Now, we'll have to see ultimately what happens. But the way that this is being framed, as Donald Trump is authoritarian, he's going after his political enemies. He's really not. He's going after the people that betrayed you if you voted for Donald Trump. He is going after the people that did everything that they possibly could to ultimately take away your vote. Because that is what they did for the first 2 years. Trump was unable to do what he was hired in to do because he was wrapped around all these investigations. So, yeah, that's a problem. It's a problem for Donald Trump. And he wants to fix the problem to make sure that it never happens again. Do you know who was on CNN over the weekend? Yeah, John Brennan, ex-CIA Director John Brennan. And he is, oh, woe is me, saying that Donald Trump is trying to destroy his reputation. Really? I don't know. It seems like you yourself, John Brennan, have destroyed your own reputation. But this is what he said on CNN.
If we can't convict someone, we will name them and shame them. And that seems to be largely what's guiding them here, no?
That seems to be the intention, which is to damage individuals. You can damage them reputationally, you can damage them financially, professionally, and so on.
Oh, my gosh. So John Brennan, I want to make sure that you understand the lack of self-awareness in former CIA Director John Brennan. Because realize that John Brennan, after he left the Obama White House as CIA director, he goes on the networks. And I think CNN, maybe it was MSN, I don't know. But he was all over the place. And do you know what he was an expert on? Do you know what John Brennan was an expert on? They would always have him on for Donald Trump colluding with the Russians. So Brennan is on all the networks, and he is the expert in Trump and colluding with the Russians. Yet as he's doing all of those television hits, he knows that it was a lie because he's the one that set up the lie. He's the one that used the dirty dossier in the intelligence community assessment. And so now he has the audacity, he has the gall to go on CNN and say, oh, yeah, you know, when you do these kinds of things, you know, Donald Trump is, you know, he can damage someone's reputation. Oh, my gosh. Do you know what he did for years? He obliterated Donald Trump's reputation, and he did it knowing that he was looking straight into that camera and lying to the American people. Now, do I really think that any of these guys are going to go to jail? No, I don't. I mean, Brennan may, because he lied under oath in Congress. You know, he said, no, we didn't, and this was under oath. No, we didn't use the dossier for that intelligence community assessment that ultimately led to the investigation by Robert Mueller. He said that in front of Congress, and now we have emails that show that he did use it, and not only that, but he insisted on using it. Here's more from Brennan.
And so by putting out these investigations or making these referrals or whatever, it does a lot of damage already, even if it never goes to trial or it doesn't go to a conviction or whatever. And that's the intent. And unfortunately, Donald Trump, who, you know, President of the United States, has tremendous authority and ability to use the instruments of governance. When I was watching that cabinet meeting this week, it was absolutely nauseating that all these individuals were fawning over him, but are so willing to be manipulated and be exploited by him. And you're talking about the Attorney General of the United States, the Department of Justice, that is supposed to be the institution that's going to represent the laws and liberties and freedoms of this country to make sure that they are going to be protected. And so, again, it's very unfortunate that Donald Trump has been able to do this, much different than in his first term, because in his first term he had people who were willing to push back. This time he does not.
So that is John Brennan playing the victim and talking about the Department of Justice, which, by the way, under Joe Biden, the Department of Justice, say it with me, I know you are, Department of Justice going after concerned parents who have to go up against school boards for the woke and racist crap that the school districts were teaching kids. and you're a concerned parent and you go to the school board, you go to the school board meeting, and you've got the DOJ and the authorities there taking notes as to who is attending and who has the courage to stand up against these incredibly woke school boards. So John Brennan and James Comey and all of these folks, we'll have to see ultimately what happens. Again, do I believe that they're going to end up going to prison? I don't believe so. You never know. Dare to dream. I hope I'm wrong. We'll have to see what happens. The phone number, Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Text line, which I use for my local show, is 615-737-9986. I am using it here on the network. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
The National Weather Service recently issued a La Niña watch, meaning the possibility of this climatic system developing in the fall or winter months. Two things USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey notes about the watch. First,
there is a likelihood of La Niña formation, but certainly we are nowhere near that point yet. We're just starting to see some signs of things happening in the equatorial Pacific, pointing us in the direction of La Niña.
However, other forecasters are
calling for a weak and short-lived La Niña. A little disagreement. That's why the odds are currently placed at about 60% chance of La Niña formation.
La Niña conditions historically mean increased drought potential in the western and southern U.S., with concerns about impacts to pastures and rangelands, forages for livestock, and fall-sown crops like winter wheat. If the forecast is accurate, this would be the fifth time in 6 winters that La Niña or La Niña-like events have occurred. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Follow me on the socials if you would. I love this story. So this is from the New York Post. President Donald Trump hints at a Biden autopen portrait in new White House Wall of Fame gallery, according to a report. So apparently, you know how the president has been redoing the Rose Garden? And I guess he's going to have a presidential wall of fame. And he is going to have, this is like an ultimate troll of Joe Biden. Because there is going to be a photo or a picture or a painting or whatever, but it's going to be Joe Biden's autopen. Because nobody really knows who the heck was running the country, but certainly we were running the country by autopen. And the question is, does anybody even know what in the world Joe Biden, via autopen, was signing? So it's pretty funny. The Daily Caller had this, and it was one of several things that they spoke about. But apparently Trump said, it's a decision that I have to make. We put up a picture of the autopen, Donald Trump telling the Daily Caller in an extensive interview published on Monday. He then shared with the publication a mock-up of what the Biden autopen portrait would look like in his special gallery. He says, I got to do it. Trump said, same picture, but black and white. Yeah, and I'm not using that one with the smile. The outlet, sadly, did not publish a photo of the mock-up or share details of its appearance. I'm sure that'll be on the way.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Boy, it's going to be a bad week for Democrats. Good morning to you. It is Dan Mandis here, indeed, in for Gary and Eric. By the way, in answer to your queries, they will return next Sunday night, Monday morning. So you got me for the next couple of days. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. I am using my text line for my local show in Nashville, 615-737-9986. If you have something to say but you don't want to call, you can always text me at that number, 615-737-9986. So why is this going to be a bad week for Democrats? A number of different reasons. Number one, you know this guy Wes Moore? Now, Wes Moore is a governor from the fine, fine state of Maryland. And for a lot of Democrats, they've been pinning their hopes and dreams on Wes Moore. There's only one problem. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Wes Moore. Okay, he's a veteran. He's black. He is overall, I mean, he's a great interview. He's affable. You know, he and Donald Trump, of course, they clearly have their differences. But there's a lot to this guy. And there were many, who have been saying that he could very well be the next candidate for president of the United States for the Democrats. And just if it's just me and you talking, I think Wes Moore is a better presidential candidate than Gavin Newsom. And Moore going up against Newsom in a primary campaign, maybe throw in Kamala in there. I think Moore comes out on top. At least I did until last week. So do you know the story about his Bronze Star? So he said that he got a Bronze Star 20 years ago. He lied about it on a job application or whatever it was. But he lied about it. He said that he had a Bronze Star. And so Republicans have been calling him out for years on this, but you know, he's a governor for the state of Maryland. Who cares? But the better and more high profile he got, the more people were calling into question, what is this story with the Bronze Star? So as Joe Biden is leaving office, 3 weeks before Joe Biden is leaving office, he gives Wes Moore the Bronze Star. And so now, Moore is saying, when he's asked about the fact that he lied about the Bronze Star for years before Biden took pity on him and finally gave him a charitable Bronze Star, he never really had to answer the question. So this came up on ABC over the weekend. It also came up with Fox News at the end of last week. And I want to play you this audio. It's about 2 minutes long, but she's going to ask the question, you lied about this for years. Even if you now have one, thanks to Joe Biden taking pity on you, this is like a charitable Bronze Star. But you lied about it for a long time. What do you have to say for yourself? This was on ABC.
You claiming you had a Bronze Star in 2006 when you were applying for a job. Why did you do that?
Well, I think I'm deeply proud of my service to this country.
Now, just so you know, this is the line that he has rehearsed. I'm deeply proud of my country, and I'm proud of the Bronze Star that I have, and he doesn't want to talk about the fact that he lied about it for 20 years. Only that he received one 3 weeks before Joe Biden left office.
And I know my soldiers that I serve with are deeply proud, and the veteran community is as well. And I think it's pretty common knowledge and common belief that when your commanding officers and your superior officers tell you, listen, we put you in and we've gone through everything, so as you're going through your application, include it. I included it, and I didn't think about it.
But in 2008 on PBS, they said they introduced you, Gwen Ifill, saying you had earned a Bronze Star medal. That's 2008. 2010, you were on the Colbert Show. When he said you had a Bronze Star, you did not correct him. You had to know you did not have one then.
Well, it was I did not go back and, go back and tell the Pentagon, hey, I was told to put this on my application, and didn't. And honestly, at that point,
I'm not talking about the Pentagon. I'm talking about you knew in those interviews you did not have one.
And here's the other thing, just real quick, because this interview is brutal. When you go onto like a show, like say, for example, Colbert, they'll ask him, give us some little interesting tidbits about yourself. And they'll say, we're going to ask you about this, we're going to ask you about that, we'll joke about this or that. I guarantee you that before his appearance on the Colbert Show and whatever that was, whatever year that was, I think she said 2008, that was all discussed beforehand, friends. Wes Moore said, yeah, I'll absolutely talk about my Bronze Star. Absolutely, I'll talk about that. In other words, he's been lying for years. And the more high profile he got, the more people were asking questions.
No, because even at the time of those interviews, it wasn't something that I even thought about. When I came home, it wasn't something that I even thought about. I didn't think about the fact that, hey, I wonder if my paperwork processed out. Now, I'm thankful that the military, after they found out that the paperwork was lost and didn't process, that they came back and awarded me the Bronze Star. So I do have a Bronze Star that I earned in Afghanistan and a combat action badge that I earned in Afghanistan. So I'm proud of that, but that's not why I served.
But do you regret not correcting when you were introduced that way?
I mean, I don't regret not going back and consistently looking over my service records. I don't. I'm thankful for the service I did. I'm grateful for the fact that I had the opportunity to lead soldiers in combat. What a small...
So there you go. That is Wes Moore. But wait, there's more. So now the Daily Mail. Because, and I'm going to be honest, I love the Daily Mail. They do great journalism with the Daily Mail. There's also some tabloid. So now, overnight and last night, this headline, damning photos. Yes, damning photos of Wes Moore. Damning photos burn top Democrat Maryland Governor Wes Moore 2028's plans to the ground as he's busted half naked on kingmaker George Clooney's luxury yacht in Italy, while his hellhole state faces crime apocalypse. Oh, this is not good, friends. Although, to be honest with you, everybody deserves a vacation. But there's Wes Moore with, I don't know if that's his wife or whatever it is, but, he's got a bathing suit on. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm defending Wes Moore because, after all, he is a Democrat. But, the truth of the matter is that his state and the city of Baltimore is a hellhole. And so now the question is, all right, do you really think that, with these photos of the Daily Mail of this dude on George Clooney's luxury yacht in Italy, while his hellhole state faces crime apocalypse, do you think that's going to be a deal breaker for Democrats? Because some people are saying, oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it will or not. And I don't know if these photos burn his plans to be the president to the ground. I really don't know. But there he is in all his glory. And I don't know what's going to happen. But you know what they did to Ted Cruz? I forget, did he go to the Caribbean? You folks listening on WBAP, when Ted Cruz in the middle of Ice-Mageddon, remember that whole thing? When the ice hit Texas and the power was out, oh, that was awful for everybody. I did a lot of shows at that time, filling in for folks. But Ted Cruz flew off to, I don't know, somewhere in the Caribbean maybe, and it was just, he got hammered. Oh, my God, how could you leave the state of Texas as the ice is coming down and the power's out and you left and you went to a warm climate? Okay. So right now, Baltimore is in a state of utter and complete chaos and crime. Maryland is obviously, as a whole, impacted by what is going on in Baltimore. And Wes Moore, the governor, decided to leave. Is that going to be an issue for the Democrats? A lot of people on the socials seem to think so. Doesn't look like he's trying to, fix the problems there in Maryland as he is hanging out on George Clooney's yacht in Italy. I'm sorry, my bad. I gotta give real news, not fake news. It wasn't just George Clooney's yacht. It was George Clooney's luxury yacht in Italy. And by the way, just for the record, yeah, I would rather be in Italy too, as opposed to Baltimore. No offense to you folks in Maryland. But I don't know how big of a deal this is. I mean, let's all be honest. Gavin Newsom, in the middle of COVID, showed absolute hypocrisy by having dinner at that fancy restaurant with all those people around the table. As everybody in California was locked down, there is Gavin Newsom, maskless, and sharing a tight space with many other people at that fancy restaurant. So, yeah, the Democrats have some problems. And as you go down the line of people who may be running for president for the Democrats, good Lord, man, you've got Gavin Newsom, who just has a lot of problems. Been talking about that off and on throughout the evening. You got Gavin Newsom, all his issues. You now have Wes Moore, and he's got an issue, a big issue as well. And by the way, you want to talk about which is worse, California or Maryland? Seems to me California, from the northern tip to the southern tip, is a complete and utter train wreck. From San Diego to the south, all the way up to the north in San Francisco and beyond. Maryland, I don't really know much about Maryland. I'm from California. I don't know really a lot about Maryland. I've been to Baltimore a few times. Love that baseball stadium. You get out of the harbor or the bay or whatever you call it. I think it's the harbor. And you are putting your life on the line. So we'll have to ultimately see what happens and see if this really does, for Wes Moore, we'll have to see if it really does burn his presidential plans to the ground. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis, in for Gary and Eric. A lot of people texting in this morning. Thank you. 615-737-9986. 615-737-WWTN is the number there. And you can follow me on the socials at Dan Mandis Show. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. I sure do appreciate you listening as I fill in for Gary and Eric. All right, so a programming note just for you folks as we wrap up the program here is that Donald Trump will be making some sort of an announcement from the Oval Office, I believe, later on today at 2 o'clock Eastern time. And this, of course, on the heels of this very bizarre thing that happened over the weekend. I've been talking about this off and on all night, where the Democrats, they were really excited. They were actually giddy because somewhere, somehow, someone started a rumor that Donald Trump was dead. only for the president to go out and play golf on Saturday. But that is not stopping the Democrats from trying to say there's something wrong with Donald Trump. And they're really, really working this. They really are. Yeah, I know. Crazy, right? The same party that was silent about Joe Biden, who, according to them, was sharp as a tack. But they will swear that there's something wrong with Donald Trump. We'll see how the president does later today at 2 o'clock Eastern. I'll see you tomorrow night. In for Gary and Eric, this is Red Eye Radio.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.